had given her a commitment to work with us to develop those exploratory efforts. We are going to be using our international connections. Brazil, Venezuela, the USA, to China, to revisit that project and to now fast track it so that those discoveries can be made and will allow us to alleviate the tremendous hardship we face in having to import 90% of our energy needs. Those are my comments, and I'm sure we can. Yeah, my colleague is just reminding me, and we don't need too much of that. It is so palpable. The mismanagement of the LNG project. If there is an instance of how not to implement a project, it is the LNG that we had crafted and had left a viable presentation to the government that has been wasted, and we can say much more on that in a little while. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Philip. Before we take the questions from the floor, though, for those of you who were not there today when the manifesto was launched, just to remind you that Dr. Omar Davis had responsibility to chair the manifesto committee, and because he was not given the opportunity yesterday to have been respond to questions asked, I'm absolutely sure that he will be more than anxious to respond to whatever question that you may wish to ask. Thanks very much. You may now direct your question to whoever you wish at the head table. Ask you to go through the routine, just identify yourself, the media house you're from, and we are directing the question to. Yes? Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Darian Luton from the Cleaner. Dr. Davis, in relation to G, I want to ask you, what if the Chinese disagree?
Just a moment, just do some changes. Come on, let's talk.
Go ahead with your question.
Yes. What if you are not able to have the Chinese agree to the renegotiation of the JD terms? Or will you then fund G?
Well, let me start by indicating, which perhaps is not known, that the loan, the $400 million US loan, was actually negotiated in principle. That commitment was made to the PNP administration. And what the JLP indicated was, what the JLP government indicated was the way in which they wished it to be allocated. And renegotiations nothing is ever cast in stone. And you have bilateral partners. It's a strange thing for a lender, note, a lender, to say this is what you'll spend it on and nothing else. I have no question about it. I have no doubt that even I would be able to negotiate that readjustment. But we have more competent people who are available. That is not an issue. What the Chinese government would be interested in is ensuring that they get repaid, which has always been a commitment of governments of Jamaica. But I can conceive of no good reason why there will be a problem in that regard.
Next, follow up.
Yes, I have a follow-up on it.
Yes, sir.
In relation to
Dr. Davis.
Yes, to Dr. Davis, still on G. Therefore, you said you use a quarter of the money available.
The remaining funds. So
it's actually of the remaining and not
of the total? No, yes, it's of the remaining. I mean, there's roughly 50% has already been badly spent. In fact, in certain instances, the money has been expended, but the corresponding work hasn't been achieved. But so we have, as you'd be aware, serious questions about those. But what we are doing is looking for the remaining 200 million US, whatever the Jamaican equivalent is. And what we're saying, therefore, is that for the next 2 fiscal years, 12-13 and 13-14, because by the time we get into office and get the things together, until the beginning of the fiscal year, you'll be looking at approximately 2 billion of the allocation for JD being used for the purposes as identified in G.
And when you spoke in the 2010 budget debate, you had actually the same G seems to be a repackaging of that presentation where you had indicated the need to create employment by using money from the Universal Access Fund and also TEP. And then you said you would read my words. In terms of rate.
I could help you with a better word, but
you're looking at for about $3 billion.
Yes.
What's the projection now, and why have you left out the Universal Access Fund now when you think about the employment creation in this area?
Well, two points. There's a general principle which I was articulating, that we're seeking to demonstrate that the state can't just lie down and die in the face of a crisis. And so at that point in time, I'm glad you have pointed to the fact that this is an issue I'd raised before, and we could just think that the poverty levels wouldn't be where they are now had the government accepted the proposal. Subsequently, with the development of the manifesto, and when we looked at the various proposals, and the proposal which came in from my colleague, Comrade Paulwell, about the extent to which we have now lagged in terms of ICT and the need to utilize the UAF. That's the main reason that has been left out.
The last question.
Fourth one.
Yes.
Fourth. Go ahead.
No problem.
Go ahead. Please.
And
what?
No, go ahead with the question.
Be precise with the answers.
Which
so
is good.
Get there. In terms of how much in total will be spent on G from the public purse, the combination of the renegotiated loan, and also give me an idea of how many jobs you intend to create and the area.
Okay, let me answer. I can be specific about. I can be specific about the JD contribution, because I know exactly what that is. I do not have the exact numbers on, for example, the TEF, for two reasons. One is that they have not put forward any published figures. But in addition, you recall that Minister Bartlett had spoken in Parliament about the fact that some airlines or some travel agents had found a way around making the TEF contribution, and hence he was going to, we, Parliament, put him in a position to correct that deficiency. So I don't know what the present numbers are, but I expect the TEF numbers to be significantly bolstered in that regard. That's so I can't be precise about that as I can be about the JD. As regards the number of jobs to be created, it would vary in terms of the projects which are being submitted, which are submitted in that regard. What we are speaking about are direct improvements to infrastructure, and people tend to have a notion of infrastructure as like Highway 2000 or an airport. But if you drive the Junction Road and look at the number of retaining walls which have collapsed, fixing them, that's infrastructure. And that's labor intensive. In South St. Andrew, the Shoemaker Gully has just broken away, and I've been pleading with NWA. Fixing that is infrastructure. Bustamante was ridiculed when he spent a significant amount of their capital budget for infrastructure was on gully fixing, and now we understand the importance. So it would depend on from location to location or from constituency to constituency what this is. Then the extent to which you could determine the labor pool to be employed would vary from project to project. About, as I promise you, a month after we are in office, I will give precise numbers on this.
Thanks very much. Next question.
Yes, Dr. Davis. Do you perceive that there could be any kind of overlap with the work that you conceptualize on the JD and other programs? I asked a question against the background. For example, the NSWMA, I think they have some beautification program going. I think there's also something
on a Jeep, not JD, on a Jeep. No, your question.
Well, yes.
Yes. Okay, good.
And also there is this other program they call Schools of Jamaica.
Yes.
And of course there are other works programs going on. So against that background, do you believe that under your proposed use of the Jeep work that there may be some overlap with what already exists?
I'm going to say something for the first time on the air anywhere. The former head of NW, I call it MPN. The former head and I had a very cordial relationship, and she and I discussed the extent to which she had an inadequate budget, which could be bolstered if we utilize. We spoke about that same proposal, which Darren reminds me of. You remember? Do you remember the date on which I made the proposal? Yes. No, he knows the exact date. But she and I spoke about that, and she commended me for that proposal in terms of using her institution to carry out these additional jobs. The TEF is a fund. It doesn't have to be involved in beautification in a sense. It's as the implementing agency. As long as they can ensure that they're getting value for money, that money can be routed through MSW, whatever it is, yes, and to carry out the activity. Andrew, in all of the reality, although you have all these ministries and whatever, it's when you sit at cabinet. I mean, it's a matter of the extent to which you then learn to collaborate in order to reach a particular objective. And so, if the objective is to improve the infrastructure and maximize employment from that spend, then all all ministries, all departments fall in line.
Would you be on sound legislative footing to use the TEF money to do what you want to do? Or do you foresee down the line you'll be accused of dipping into the thing that wasn't allocated for the box side?
Well, no, the TEF funds, one commitment in the manifesto is transparency. The TEF funds, as you asked me, have you asked Minister Bartlett what he's spending TEF funds on?
Well,
yes?
Yeah.
You do, and